Welcome to Itachi versus Obito, the versus battle of the week. And start out with round 1, Itachi versus Jubito. Now look, this is just mean, okay? Itachi is hopelessly outmatched against Jubito here. And honestly, I don't even want to talk about this battle because I just feel like a bully. But surprisingly, I found enough instances of some pretty disgusting Itachi wank from people who claim that he can, in fact, beat Jubito throughout my time on the internet to let me know that this actually is an issue worth discussing, apparently. So I guess I'll go over this battle for just a little bit and explain why Itachi has absolutely no chance of victory here. Now, what I'm about to say is pretty obvious. Anybody who spends even a little bit of time dabbling in Naruto versus battles is well aware of this, and that is that in a battle like this, Itachi's greatest asset is the Yata Mirror, right? Like, with it, he can supposedly deflect anything. That's pretty well established throughout the Naruto community. But one thing that isn't quite as well known is the reason why the Yata Mirror is supposedly an impenetrable shield is because it is composed of every nature transformation, and it can adapt to any situation that its wielder finds themselves in by applying the traits of different natures to itself in order to counteract the traits of any physical or spiritual attack it comes into contact with. So basically, it's so strong because it's composed of every nature at once, right? Now, this should sound a little bit familiar to some of you because there's another thing in the Naruto world that is also composed of every nature at once, and that would be the truth-seeking orbs, or the truth-seeking balls, whatever you want to call them, the Gudodama, one of the key parts of Jubito's arsenal, as a matter of fact. And so common sense would dictate that because the Gudodama possessed the trait supposedly responsible for the Yata Mirror's impenetrability, Jubito would be able to use the truth-seeking orbs to counteract it, right? So all Jubito would have to do is create a sufficiently powerful attack using his truth-seeking orbs, and logic dictates that he would be able to penetrate Itachi's Yata Mirror this way. But there's a little bit more to the discussion than that as well. See, the truth-seeking orbs, despite being composed of all nature transformations, are not invincible. They can be countered with senjutsu. Now, I'm not saying that this is 100% fact or anything. It's never been confirmed, but it stands to reason that senjutsu would also be capable of dealing with Itachi's Yata Mirror, right? And granted, that doesn't mean that senjutsu attacks automatically obliterate any attacks with composition similar to that of the truth-seeking balls. For instance, using a truth-seeking orb shield, Obito was able to block a senjutsu-enhanced tailed beast bomb along with a senjutsu-enhanced Susanoo arrow at the same time. But if you look closely at the manga panel he does this in, you can see pretty clearly that his shield started to take a little bit of damage. And again, its composition should be identical to that of the Yata Mirrors, meaning that when put up against senjutsu, the Yata Mirror is not invincible. And since Obito, after becoming the Jinchuriki of the Tin Tails, was given far and away the strongest form of Sage Mode in the entire series, it's very easy to argue that he'd be able to break through Itachi's Yata Mirror, either using a senjutsu attack or using the truth-seeking balls. You can even combine both of these arguments at once and say that not only is Itachi's Yata Mirror weak to senjutsu, it's also susceptible to damage from the truth-seeking balls, as they're both composed of the same thing, and Jubito is obviously way stronger than Itachi is, so he shouldn't have too much trouble breaking through what should otherwise be a pretty standard shield. And that's it. That's really all Itachi has is the Yata Mirror, so doesn't really look like he's gonna be able to do anything to Jubito. Yeah, he has the Totsuka Blade, which he can use for an insta-kill here, but it's so fucking what? If Obito fires a Jubi Blast at Itachi, you think he's just gonna survive that? Absolutely not. And his Edo Tensei regeneration powers aren't even a factor in this battle because the truth-seeking balls nullify those. So living or dead, Itachi gets washed. Now, even if he can't break through the Yata Mirror, it's not like the thing is omnidirectional. So if Obito goes with 4 Crimson Ray formation Biju Bomb, the attack that he used to nearly single-handedly wipe out the entirety of the allied shinobi forces, Itachi's fucked. End of story. Obito takes this round negative difficulty. So next up, we have White Mask Obito with the Rinnegan, the Mangekyo Sharingan, and 6 Jinchuriki at his disposal that he can transform into tailed beasts at will. And now, look, this is also a pretty horrific mismatch in Obito's favor. Alright, you've got Itachi, who already has some pretty bad stamina issues, going up against this guy who has the Rinnegan, the ability to phase through any attack, and 6 6 tailed beasts at his disposal at full power, all of whom he shares vision with. So there's no fucking way Itachi's gonna catch Obito lacking in this battle, because his field of vision is practically infinite here. He can phase through attacks, as I've already said. The only reason he took any damage at all in the fight against Naruto B, Kakashi, and Guy is because Kakashi was there and he was able to counter Obito's Kamui with his own Kamui. Of course, Itachi does not have that luxury. He's stuck with plain old Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi. And look, Obito's not stupid. He's not a complete fucking buffoon. He knows better than to look Itachi in the eye. Like, come on, Tsukuyomi, it's not landing on Obito. And even if it does, the series has made it clear that it can be broken out of by a fellow Uchiha. By an Uchiha much less experienced with Genjutsu than Obito, as a matter of fact. Sasuke. Now, you can make the argument that Itachi let Sasuke break out of Tsukuyomi during their fight, which is perfectly reasonable, but Itachi's also flat out said that the only way to counter Tsukuyomi is with another Mangekyo Sharingan, so I don't think I'm making a humongous logical leap by saying that Obito would be able to resist it even if he was caught in it. But again, that's a big if, because he'll probably just avoid looking Itachi in the eye for the entire fight in order to avoid having to deal with Tsukuyomi in the first place. Now, another pretty cool part of Itachi's arsenal that you might think is pretty bad news for Obito is Ephemeral, the finger genjutsu that he cast on Naruto, but this is a complete non-issue. A lot of people bring this up and act as though it makes Itachi some untouchable god, because it can affect people with genjutsu without even looking at them. But look, Naruto, who has no genjutsu talent whatsoever, was able to break out of it after a bit of struggling, of course, but he was still able to break free, and Obito is no genjutsu slouch. Like, his skill with genjutsu is fucking light years ahead of Naruto's. There aren't a whole lot of genjutsu feats for him in the manga, but one that's pretty big is the fact that he was able to mind control Yagura, a perfect Jinchuriki, using genjutsu, and B was like fucking flat out convinced that genjutsu could not affect Jinchuriki at all. So, I don't know, man. Obito seems pretty good on the genjutsu front to me. I'm pretty sure Itachi's not getting him with Ephemeral or Tsukuyomi, so let's take those off the table. At the very least, they're not going to wipe Obito out immediately, right? I think that's fair. So ninjutsu's completely worthless against him because not only can he phase through it, but he can also presumably absorb it. Now, Obito never used the abilities of the Rinnegan, but he made it pretty clear that he still can. Kakashi was like, he's probably not doing it because we already know how to counter them because we fought pain and, you know, it take up a whole lot of chakra. And Obito was like, precisely, that is exactly why, Kakashi. Good on you, you're quite observant. And taijutsu is also a pretty horrible idea because, again, Obito can phase through any of Itachi's attacks, and up close, like, rest in peace if you're fighting against this dude in close quarters combat. Obito can either suck Itachi into the Kamui dimension and just leave him there forever, or he can use the human path of the Rinnegan to rip out Itachi's soul. And that's without even mentioning the fact that there are 6 fucking Biju running around the battlefield for Itachi to deal with at the same time. Like, it's just not fair to him at all here. Once again, he gets thoroughly stomped, so round 2 goes to Obito. Round 3 would be Rinnegan Obito without his mask and without control of the tailed beasts after the reanimation jutsu was released by Kabuto. And I mean, like, just because he doesn't have the Biju doesn't mean Itachi suddenly gets the win here. Obito can still phase through all of Itachi's attacks, absorb, like, every single one of the points that I brought up previously applies here. Obito just can't apply the added pressure that he could with a Biju in this fight. He can still close in on Itachi, suck him into Kamui forever, or rip out his soul, and GG. So round 3 also goes to Obito. Now, whether Itachi is Edo or alive doesn't really matter in these first 3 scenarios because no matter what, he gets stomped. In Jubito's case, the truth-seeking balls nullify Itachi's regen, and in Rinnegan Obito's case, the fact that he can just rip Itachi's soul out is pretty bad news for the guy as well, since Impure World reincarnation fundamentally functions by trapping a person's soul inside of another person's body. So, I mean, it's common sense that having the soul ripped out would undo the jutsu. Yeah, you get the idea. But now, these next few fights, that's where things start to get interesting. So, Itachi versus Dual Mangekyo Sharingan Obito, or DMS Obito, as many people call him. This is a much more interesting battle than the last 2 because the 2 of them are now on a much more even playing field. Now, this isn't DMS Obito with his 6 paths chakra, and I'm just going to assume that he can't use his perfect Susanoo here because if he could, then Itachi would get shit on in seconds, and I really don't want another another round of that happening. So let's just assume it's Obito with the ability to use Kamui from both eyes. He has full stamina, unlike the DMS Obito that we saw in the anime and the manga, but he just doesn't have access to his 6 paths powers or to the Rinnegan abilities that he had in the previous 2 fights. Now this is a bit weird, because the long-range Kamui that Kakashi has access to, it shouldn't be dismissed in this fight, because it was able to affect the truth-seeking orbs on multiple occasions. Kakashi was able to teleport some of Madara's shield away in order to give Guy an opening to damage him, and he was also able to outright teleport some of the orbs while they were moving. And now I mentioned earlier in the video that the Yata Mirror's composition is very similar to that of the truth-seeking balls, so it might be possible for Obito to Kamui a hole through the Yata Mirror and fire some jutsu through it from a range. Now here's the thing, up against this Obito, I don't think Itachi is going to rely on his full-body Susanoo too heavily because of how I assume it reduces his mobility. Itachi's never shown the ability to manifest legs from his Susanoo, and obviously having to worry about this gigantic ethereal exoskeleton makes it difficult to be nimble and agile. Now maybe his full-body Susanoo doesn't hinder how much he can move, I'm not sure, but considering he wasn't constantly using it after being revived with Edo Tensei, I think that it's not too far-fetched. So assuming Itachi doesn't use his Susanoo, this would actually be a pretty cool fight to look at, but he wouldn't really be able to do much to Obito since Kamui sort of counters everything. And with the long-range Kamui that Kakashi uses added to his arsenal, Obito would be able to pretty easily snipe Itachi's head off, and Itachi, aware of this, would likely know that it's probably time to throw up his Susanoo to keep Obito from Kamuiing off any body parts. At that point, I imagine Obito just charging forward, phasing through the Yata Mirror, and sucking Itachi into the Kamui dimension. And that would be it for living Itachi, but Edo Itachi would sort of remain there forever, so he wouldn't win by killing Itachi, but it would count as a BFR, or battlefield removal. So he has a bit more trouble against Itachi here in this scenario, but I'm still gonna give the win to Obito. Now I'm not entirely sure who's stronger between Orange Mask Obito and Yellow Mask Obito, because while Yellow Mask Obito does have possession of the 9-tailed fox and also fights with its chains, Orange Mask Obito is like 17 years older and has had a lot more time to practice using jutsu and whatnot. But just because of the tools that he has access to, I'm gonna back up to Yellow Mask Obito first and save Orange Mask Obito for the end. Now let's split this round into 2 sub-rounds, with the 9-tails and without the 9-tails. With the 9-tails, Obito would be able to put way too much pressure on Itachi. He would be able to get right up to him, suck him into the Kamui dimension, and then boom. It would be GG no Ri. Now I don't want to be too dismissive of Itachi here. I don't want to make it seem like I'm completely ignoring what he'd be able to do in response, but that is exactly how the fight would go. If Obito was able to react to Minato's attacks, then he'll certainly be able to do the same thing to Itachi's. And with the 9-tails running around, possibly blasting off a couple Bijudama, Itachi will sort of be forced to throw up his full-body Susanoo in order to protect himself, because I don't think he'd be able to tank the explosion of a Biju bomb any other way. Obito would use this as an opening, slip right through the Yata Mirror, suck Itachi into Kamui, and the fight would be over. Now without the 9-tails, this becomes a much more interesting battle, because Itachi wouldn't be forced to use his Susanoo right out of the gate, and he also wouldn't have to deal with the egregious amount of pressure created by the 9-tails' presence there. And since this is a young Obito, Itachi might be able to catch him with a couple genjutsu after a few taijutsu exchanges, if not Izanami outright. This battle is a lot more up in the air. Itachi's a much harder target to catch, and on top of that, the presumable lack of experience that Obito has with genjutsu here will leave him susceptible to Itachi's most powerful weapon, which leads me to believe that this fight could go either way. If Obito ends up falling for Itachi's genjutsu, then Itachi probably takes this high difficulty. If not, though, Itachi doesn't really have any counters to Kamui, and he gets taken care of pretty handily by Obito with or without the 9-tails. Obviously, Obito will have a much easier time against living Itachi than Edo Itachi, but I don't think the version of Itachi will make too much of a difference in this fight. The outcome remains the same either way. Whether Itachi fights as Edo or living, though, all that does is alter the difficulty. Now finally, we come to Orange Mask Obito, and while he doesn't have the 9-tails or the chains on him, neither of those really made a difference in the fight against Itachi to begin with, because Obito wouldn't need to use his chains against Itachi, right? Like, as soon as he closes in on him to begin with, he'll manage to suck him into Kamui, and that'll be that. And the 9-tails only really made a difference because it made up for Obito's lack of genjutsu resistance. This Obito is 17 years older than the one that fought Minato, so I'm 100% certain that considering this is the same guy that, like I mentioned earlier in the video, was able to control the 4th Mizukage, a perfect Jinchuriki, using genjutsu, he'd be able to resist all of Itachi's attempts at casting genjutsu on him here. Now I know what a lot of people are saying. Oh, but Suekage, Obito was scared of Itachi. He said after Itachi died that the leaf was no longer
longer off limits and that he could go attack him.
Well, you think he wanted Itachi to fucking leave the Akatsuki? No, of course not. He was a very valuable asset to the team. And why take that unnecessary risk anyway? He knew Itachi was going to die eventually, that it was going to be part of a planned battle with Sasuke, which he planned to take advantage of in order to get Sasuke to join the Akatsuki in Itachi's place. It just doesn't make any sense for him to take a risk he doesn't need to when he knew Itachi was gonna die to begin with. Sure, maybe he was a little uncertain about fighting the guy, but that doesn't mean he thought Itachi was stronger than him. There were a whole lot of bad things that could have happened if Obito attacked the leaf before Itachi's death. So now that we've got that out of the way, that Obito's statement does not mean he is scared of Itachi because he's stronger than him or whatever, let's talk about the actual fight. So basically, Itachi's physical attacks, as in every single one of these rounds, will have absolutely no effect on Obito unless he can find a way to outlast the 5-minute time limit. And even then, I'm pretty sure that that 5-minute time limit is only, strictly speaking, consecutively. Like, if Obito takes a break from phasing through attacks for even a fraction of a second, then this timer should reset, as I know that the battle against Naruto, Bee, Guy, and Kakashi took way longer than 5 minutes, and Obito was able to phase through all of their attacks right up until the very end. So it's not like he has to beat Itachi within 5 minutes or anything like that. Let's make that clear. Meaning that, again, Itachi has no chance to land any physical attacks on him whatsoever. The only part of Itachi's arsenal capable of dealing with an intangible enemy like this would be Genjutsu, and I've already explained why Genjutsu's ineffective against Obito, so I can't really see any way that he comes out on top here. Obito already has way too much intel on Itachi for anything he tries to be effective, including Izanami, so I think I'm gonna have to give Orange Mask Obito the win as well. So in conclusion, Itachi wins maybe one round, depending on Yellow Mask Obito's resistance to Genjutsu, and Obito wins all of the rest. So sorry for sort of glossing over both characters' abilities for the most part in this battle. I know I didn't cover them as extensively as I could have, but I just didn't want this video to be like an hour long, like I said. But anyway, leave your thoughts about the battle in the comments below. If I got anything wrong, of course, let me know in the comments, and I'll make sure to address it. If you have any ideas for future versus battles, make sure you let me know in the comments as well, and until my next video, I'll talk to you later.